Hey, y'all, and welcome to another exciting episode of Down Home Dirt, the show where we dive deep into the journey of entrepreneurship with those who took the plunge and all the ups and downs that come with it. I'm your host, Dusta, and today we're met with Akpene, and she is with Ezer Unfolding. I'm super excited to have her come in and share a lot of knowledge with us because there's things that I still need to learn as an entrepreneur. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
I'm excited to get to know more because when I met you, it was at a networking event.
Mm-hmm.
And we always talk in the podcast about how important networking is. And this is a prime example. We would have never crossed paths otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we
So,
bumped into each other at the Clayton Harvest Festival. So
we
yeah,
did, which was so cool. I love that. That's the one thing I like about a small town is that you're going to run into somebody at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from and how did you end up in the Triangle?
Okay, so like how much time do we have? I'm from a lot of places. I'm never sure what people are referring to. So my parents are from Ghana in West Africa. They immigrated over here. They immigrated to Canada first, where my older sister was born. Then my dad got his PhD at the University of Oklahoma, where I was born. Then we moved to Florida for a short time, and then I grew up mostly in mid-state New York. And then we moved to Texas, where I was for over 20 years. After that, I actually was a short-term missionary for a while and visited a bunch of countries. Like I think the end of 2003, I got stamped for my 7th country that year. So I traveled a lot.
Amazing.
And then I was in Texas, I was in New York, back to Texas, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, from Charlotte to Greenville, and now I'm here. Got married, met my husband online, and we talked. And then because I had my business and I could do things remotely, I moved out there. Love ECU and all that, but Greenville is a college town in the middle of farmland, and we wanted to be a little bit closer, be in a small town, but close to the city. And so that's how we landed in Clayton. And we love it. We absolutely love it. And have been here, I want to say 3 years now.
Oh, wow. I've been here for 5, so I understand. Everyone I talk to says the same thing. They just ended up here and they love it. They're not leaving.
Yeah. My husband had an opportunity to move out to Charlotte, and he was like, I hate Charlotte. I'm like, okay, that's fine, because I love Clayton. So yeah, we'll stay here. We'll figure something out. Yeah.
You enjoy?
Yes, exactly.
They have a huge mall in Concord that I went to. It's like a 3-mile long mall. Like that was the most exciting thing I did out there.
Yeah, I saw it, and I'm not a mall person, and I was like, that looks nice, and kept on driving. So yeah.
I feel you on that. I have not been to a mall since then. That was over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
Cool. We have a mall.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. For other people, I'm happy to refer other people to it. And then if they want to hang out and say, let's hang out at the mall, I'm like, let's not. Let's do something else.
Let's go have some fun. I'm with you on that. I used to live in Asheville when I first came to North Carolina, and I feel like I did all the things that you could possibly do out there. And then I was like, cool. And I lived out there for a while. And then I was like, all right, time to explore a new city that has a lot more. That's how I ended up over here.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
now Raleigh and Durham and Cary, you can do anything and everything. So yeah, I see that.
That was my whole thing. Cause like, I love the mountains and it's great for a vacation, but like living there full time, I was like, I've done everything. I'm bored.
Yeah, I'm done. So yeah.
Right. You can only hike so many mountains and run from so many bears. I'm going to be honest.
I'm going to need to hear that bear story sometime. So yes.
I'll just tell it to you now because it's fabulous. I am from Florida and we do not have bears like that, right? Like your worst predator is, I lived on the beach, to preface all this. So like the worst predator we have is an alligator, and A, they don't move that fast, and B, like you kind of see them coming, right?
Yes.
So I'm living out in the mountains and I have no cell phone signal. And I'm like, just kind of having the windows open and I'm standing there like getting ready and everything. And I had a boyfriend at the time who was actually from here. And he looks at me and he's like, don't move. And I was like, what is going on? Like, why not move? And he's like, there's a bear about to charge through your freaking door right now. And I was like, oh, this is not cool. It was a mama bear too, because her little cubs were out there.
Oh
And
no.
I was paying no attention, right? Here's the best part. I had a roommate at the time. He was out back and the bear came out there and he texts me and he goes, I'm on the roof. You need to save me. And I like went out there with a shotgun and I just like let it go off because he said that's all you needed to do. And the bear took off and I was like, okay, this is not for me.
And that's when you decided you needed to leave.
Yep. I was like, we're packing all this up and going because this is not for me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, no, that's amazing.
So, no more bears. I'm good.
Mhm.
Gonna stay over here where they're not.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So let's jump into it. Tell us about what you do and who's your ideal client.
Okay, so I do business coaching, and so I do two things. There's business coaching and HR consulting. Business coaching is for small business to kind of help them to succeed. A lot of small businesses know what they want to do, but have no clue how to do it and have no idea of all the different things. And I'm just really good at helping people go from point A to B to C to D and all that. And so my plan is to make them successful enough that they don't need me anymore within 2 years. And so working with them, I also do leadership coaching for first-time managers to C-suite. There's usually a lot of availability for executive coaching, but I feel like that first-time managers and a small, like mid-managers don't have enough of support. So I decided to do a ranged scale of leadership coaching. So that's my coaching part of my business. And then HR consulting. I did HR for a long time, stepped out of that, really built up my business, and then went back into HR and decided that I really, really want to help small businesses do HR right, not be afraid of it, but also not have the burden. If they don't need a full-time HR person, I am in their consultant to help do things right. So that's kind of my two arms of my business.
That's great because I, as a small business owner, can't afford HR full time. So it'd be great to be able to have it there as needed.
Yeah, that's what I like. Also, as an HR consultant, I have the freedom to, if I'm telling people what they need to do and how they need to do it and all that stuff, it's an option for people to, follow the law or not, and I help them to do it in the best way possible. But there are some people who are just stubborn and say, well, I'm a small business, it doesn't matter. Regardless of the fact that once you get dinged, it matters a whole lot and you never know when you're going to get dinged. And so I want to help prevent that. And also, like on my website, I talk about being people focused and business oriented. And it's not an opposition. It's something that really, really helps tie each other together, that you can really establish your people and also be successful as a business owner. So, yeah.
Absolutely agree with that because sometimes I'm not even going to say sometimes, it's always hard.
Mm-hmm.
There is no
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes, it is hard. And I know that we'll probably touch on this, that entrepreneurship, while it's very rewarding, it's very hard. And people miss sometimes the concept of the hard stuff and the choices that you make and all the things that you do have to do. So, but it's good for the people.
Absolutely. And that's kind of why I started this podcast, is because I wanted to highlight that it's not just all glory, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people feel like, oh, I want to be a business owner so I can do whatever I want. Well, there's a lot more to than that,
Yeah.
So
And
I want to be like,
being as a business owner, you can't do whatever you want. So, yeah.
Exactly. Like that was the other thing too. You don't work 40 hours a week. You work 24/7, unfortunately. But at the same time, you kind of have some, control over your schedule.
Yeah.
And that's the main benefit for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about flexibility, how much you want to put into it and what you want. What is your definition of success? So, yeah.
Yes, because I have done this podcast for a while now, and I've realized when I ask people like what is their definition of success or like how do they practice it, the answers vary widely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually just talking to one of my clients, and she was stressed out to the max because she's like, I need to do this and I need to do this and I need to do this and I can't, and I don't know when enough is enough. And I'm like, well, that's your choice. And she was like, what? I'm like, yeah, no, you define what success is, not the people who have hired you, not, other family members, not social media. You define what your success is. You set up your markers, you meet those. And when you have achieved success, that is your victory point. Don't forget to celebrate it.
I love that because I think about how sometimes I do let social media kind of define my success, but then I have to like take a breather and a break and realize I'm going to go into burnout if I keep trying to keep up with these unrealistic expectations.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I know that we talked a little bit before we started recording about the burnout. Do you want to touch on that now?
Burnout is, what are some words for it? I was telling you, I just recently wrote a post about when life catches on fire, and the fact that burnout can take you by surprise because you can keep doing life and there's stuff that pops up and you're like, okay, I need to focus on this, or this doesn't matter, or something like that, till all of a sudden one day you are deep in depression and you never saw it coming, or something like that. That's what happened to me. I'm business coach, and I was not doing the things that I was encouraging my clients to do. And one of the things about burnout that we talked about is that there's such a stigma to it. But at the same time, in the American society, there's the pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Mm-hmm.
There's the go, 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 do it 24/7, succeed at all costs. And that doesn't quite drive with a person who's taking care of themselves. And so we need to destigmatize burnout, and we need to be able to learn what our boundaries are and to be able to stick to boundaries. I was in a store the other day. I thought this was the funniest joke that I saw. Funniest joke was, why did the narcissist cross the road? Because they saw a boundary. So yeah, I was
That
like,
is so good.
oh my goodness. And so people don't stick to their boundaries because they're caring about what other people think or do or whatever. You do need to know what's best for you and do it in the face of opposition. Otherwise, your body is going to oppose you. So, yeah.
Yes, that happened to me. It was if you don't choose a day to rest, your body will choose one for you, and it did. And this happened back in like September.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't work for 2 weeks. I couldn't get out of bed. I was just absolutely debilitated. Thought I was going to lose everything, and had to quickly figure out how I was going to be able to still make money and run my business and do everything while also not being able to leave my bed.
Yep. Yeah. So we need to be able to understand that burnout is a thing, especially in the society that presses for us to do everything 24/7 and instantly, and to be able to take care of ourselves. Because I really believe that our body, and if you're spiritual or not, that the spiritual atmosphere says you need to take a rest at some point in time. And if, like you said, if you don't, something will make you. So I prefer to choose it myself other than other people or my body having a hissy fit because I haven't, been able to take a relaxing time. So.
Yep, 100%. And I think that we need to, as people in general, just make sure that we're setting those boundaries and taking care of ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. I do trainings and workshops, and one of them ones that I'm working on is boundaries, building fences, not fortresses. Sometimes we go too far in one direction and say no to everything, and that's not beneficial. But we do need our little boundaries. We need our fences that has a little gate that we can open and invite people to and close when solicitors come around. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so very important. We're going to have to talk about that after the podcast because I am curious to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. So, what inspired you to become a business coach, HR consultant, and a leadership development strategist? Can you share a pivotal moment in your journey that shaped your approach?
So, like I said before, I was doing HR for a nonprofit, and I started off as an executive assistant. And then I was doing program events management. And then I was doing HR because I didn't have an HR. And I eventually became a regional director to one of the locations. So I was doing 4 full-time jobs, actually 5, because I was doing a lot of operations too, because I didn't have that one. And talk about burnout. I didn't really realize what it was until I actually left. And my body just went into like meltdown mode. And I left because I was like, I actually need to find out what I want to do when I grow up. And so I was kind of kicking around. Knew I was good at process management. I also helped people start businesses before I was a business coach. And somebody told me that I should be a project manager, but then they said, you should be a counselor. You're really good at listening and helping people do stuff or take care of stuff. And I was like, yeah, but counselors deal with a lot of past crap. I want to move people to look to the future. And they're like, yeah, no, that's what a coach does. I was like, people get paid for this? Really? Okay. So I got my training with a Coach Training Alliance and started my business. I think it was 2016. And I decided I wanted to do business coaching because I was already doing that. I already knew how to look at all the processes in order to start a business that people don't think about, like the filings, bookkeeping, all that stuff. And then to get people looking towards a plan. And I did a statistic that like 80% of small businesses fail within the first 2 years. And I'm like, not on my watch. So I decided that this is what I wanted to help with. I was a huge supporter of small businesses before. And I said, this is how I'm going to put my support to. So I was doing that so that was 2016, about 3 to 4 years. And then, national or global pandemic hit and everything was shut down. But I was already doing a lot of things remotely. I was actually teaching on a homeschool platform called OutSchool, and I was teaching social skills. And so I was doing that part-time, which became full-time as everybody became homeschooled. And it was crazy. And I was doing my business and everything like that. And at that time, I was seeing how businesses were furloughing people, shutting down, laying people off. And I became very, very agitated. I was like, but don't they know? Like business sense and people sense, they need to be able to understand how to run their business and also how to manage people. So I decided I would go back into HR. So my thought was I get hired on with the company, help them out. And I got hired on in 2021, I think it was, to a small consulting company who wanted to have an HR person to be strategic to help them move their HR forward, which I was able to do a little bit. But there was a lot bit of tension on what strategic HR was. And I'm an empathetic person, and I was taking it in all physically, and it broke me. And so after 2 years, I went on a mental health leave to try to get my stuff together. And then as I was coming back, I was like, I can't do this. I need to be able to work with small businesses that want that help. And if they don't want it, I can move on to the next. And then I wanted to continue with the coaching. And the leadership training happened as a conglomeration of the two. I found myself doing leadership coaching with the managers that I was working with. And then I did a couple of trainings for people outside. And I was like, I love doing this. I love doing this. Let's just throw this into the mix because I love doing this. So yeah, that's kind of my Cliff Notes story of how I got to it.
I love that because I feel like a lot of people, they don't jump into it necessarily. Sometimes they just fall into what they want to do.
Yeah.
After realizing all the stuff they don't want to do.
Yeah, that's a lot of the HR thing. I didn't realize. So when I was a full-time HR, I was seeing some of these things on LinkedIn pop up called HR consultants and fractional HRs. And I was like, wait a minute, what is this? You mean I could have been doing that? Yes. Okay. So that's why I was like, you know what? I could do business consulting or business coaching and HR consulting. And that kind of marries a lot of my strengths, my my gifts, my tools. And so when I was making the exit from full-time HR, I just kind of tacked that onto my business because I really still want to do that. I think HR is important, and there's a stigma to HR, the HR profession, because people say HR is not your friend and don't trust HR. Nobody says finance is not your friend. Nobody says legal is not your friend. Nobody says marketing is not your friend. But for some reason, HR needs to be your friend. And don't know where people got that. And there's a lot of the burnout in the HR community is very, very high. And I would say for people who are still in there, check on your HR people because they're not okay. They're really not. So, yeah.
Especially this time of year.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah.
That's great. I love that. So we
Mm-hmm.
talked about success a little bit and how it's defined. How do you define success for your clients, and how do you help them set realistic yet ambitious goals?
Okay. So, two questions. How do I define success for my clients is when they feel successful. So, part of our establishment of goals is what does success look like for them? And I actually was doing that with one of my clients, and we spent actually about 6 weeks, almost 2 months, trying to figure that out because it was, oh, I just needed more clients. And I'm like, okay, how many more clients? What does that look like? As many as possible is not reasonable. And so she has a family of two special needs boys. And so we actually talked about reasonably, what does that look like to be successful and also to be a good mom to her kids? And so that helped her recognize, okay, this many clients would be actually very, very sustainable and successful. And then when the boys reach this age, then we can shift. And that's one of the things that I, I find myself really happy when people understand that success is not just one thing for all time, that success can change depending on the season that you're in. So let's define what success looks now. And I usually talk about a six-month plan, a year plan, a 5-year plan, and a 10-year plan. Most people don't know what they want to do in their 10 years, and I'm fine with that. I'm saying, okay, what are you working towards for your 5-year? And then what does that look like? What are the steps to get there? And then what does 6 months and 1 year look like? So when people can figure that out and understand that they're not tied to somebody else's success, but they can do what is valuable for them and their family, I feel like when they have that mind shift, that's successful for me.
I will agree with you on that. I have no idea what I want my life to look like in 10 years.
I know.
I don't even know what I want it to look like in 5 years, but I got a 1 year goal.
That's good. That's good. I hate it when companies interview and it's like, what do you like? What does success look like, or where do you want to be in 10 years? And I'm like, I don't know where I want to be in 10 days. So that's not a valid, really valid question here. So yeah.
I'd love to be in the Caribbean for about 10 days.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as it went, I don't know. Get me
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's me. I'd rather be on the beach. But no, we've got to get the business taken care of first, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes and that's another thing is to going back to the boundaries is planning in your me time, your self-care time as a part of your goals. So I had her, she was working 24/7 and she was burning herself out. And I was like, you need to take your rest day. That is part of, I'm very rarely prescriptive. I'm collaborative, but I tell her, you need to have a rest day and I need you to tell me when it is. Because when you have your rest day, it allows your brain to wind down and actually restore. And then you actually tend to be more innovative and creative once you've taken that rest day. So it's planning for rest, but also planning for success too. Celebrate your wins, the small ones and the big ones.
Absolutely. It took me a while to realize that. So I have a new saying that I do, which is Saturday we rest and Sunday we give it our best. And by that, I mean the things that I need to get done for me in my home. I do not work. Sometimes I edit. I do cheat and I edit.
Yeah. I love that. My husband and I, we call it hardcore Sabbath. Like from Friday night, sometimes we do a game night, but Saturday, we are just like, we'll wake up anywhere from 8 to noon, and then we chill out. Sometimes I have craft projects. Sometimes we just, chill in front of YouTube. And when people want to do something on Saturday, I'm like, maybe next month. So, yeah.
I feel that. I know everybody wants to do like parties and stuff on Saturdays, and I'm like, leave me alone. It's my day.
Yeah.
It's like the only day I get.
Yeah. Like Sunday is preparing for work. I'll do stuff Sunday all day long because we've got to be up and around and stuff like that. Saturday, I'm like, do I have to put clothes on? Because don't wanna.
That's so funny because I realized the other day that I own more pajamas than I do real clothes. And so whenever I have to go somewhere, I'm like, oh. So I've got this tracksuit that I always wear because it's like the most comfortable thing ever.
Nice.
And I'm like, it's close enough to PJs, but also close.
Yeah, my husband, I love my husband. He bought me a pair of sweatpants or a sweat skirt. So it's very comfortable and it's sweatpant material. But it's, can be, worn in public, but I'm still super comfortable and, take off the shoes and put on slippers and I'm good to go. I'm like, I love you, baby. Mm-hmm.
I do not wear real shoes. And I don't know if this is like a sensory issue thing, but it's either slippers if it's cold and flip flops no matter what.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I used to work with somebody that unless it was below zero, he wore flip flops.
What are the most common challenges you see entrepreneurs facing today, and how do you guide them through these obstacles?
So one thing I see is people trying to do everything themselves. And so I say that once you have one or two clients, start outsourcing. Like as soon as I had some income coming in, I hired my bookkeeper and she became my assistant because I can do the bookkeeping, but that is not what I want to do for my business. And the time I spent bookkeeping, she can do it faster. And then I can use my time, which is worth more than doing bookkeeping, doing something else out. And so when I break down the math for people, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so doing a lot of stuff in business makes sense when you're first starting out. But once you start having some income, it's really hard for people to let go, but you need to be able to let go in order for you to be more successful. So that is one thing. And the other thing is don't do it by yourself. Always have people around you. You can have family and that's great, but you need people sometimes outside of your business. You need people like in the same circles sometimes, but outside of your business. I've joined a couple of networking groups. I'm an introvert, so it's not going to be very many, but people that I talk to, and then people that I've developed relationships. Some are past clients that have become advisors. You need a variance of voices around you, because if you're trying to do it yourself, you are A, more likely to get discouraged, and B, you start having tunnel vision. So yeah, I would recommend outsourcing as soon as possible and surround yourself with a multitude of counselors.
Absolutely. We had a very good guest recently. His name was Kareem, and he came on.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
I love him. And he was talking about how even Michael Jordan had a coach and like making sure that we figure out who's going to do it, not how we're going to do it. And I really needed that to be refreshed today because that was something I was kind of struggling with before we did the podcast today. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? No, it's who am I going to get to do this?
Yes. Delegation is a thing that if done poorly, it can give you stress, but if done well, can change your whole outlook on life. And that may sound very, very existential, but I love my assistant, my bookkeeper who became my assistant. I know that I can task her or something that even if she can't get it done, she can tell me where she's running into things and we can work on it together, but it's not my responsibility anymore. And I am free to do other things. You find yourself people you can depend on, and it's wonderful. Wonderful.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like I need to get my checklist together of all the things I need to outsource. So I'm gonna work on that. Thank you.
Yeah. And you can do it slowly. You shouldn't do it all at once because sometimes we'll lean in that direction. But find Like even just offloading one or two things will make a difference that allows you to offload some of the more major things a little bit more down the road. So yeah.
That's good. That's great advice, actually. Now I kind of have an idea of where I need to, whatever.
And I find people swing from I'm going to do it all myself to I'm going to delegate everything. I'm like, let's just keep a moderation here. So
No, that's perfect advice because that's kind of what I feel like. Just here, someone else take all this. And I'm like, wait a second. I need to make sure that I'm baby
mm-hmm.
stepping it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't expect someone to take it all on. So how important is a mindset in entrepreneurship, and what strategies do you recommend for shifting from a negative one to a more positive and productive one?
I think mindset is one of the most important things. I am a firm believer that your whole body is very holistic. And so if you have a negative mindset about something, it's going to affect you physically. And so if you're looking at entrepreneurship with fear and trembling, but feel like because you don't like your job or something else that you still have to do it, you're going to struggle there too. You're not running away. You end up running away for something and meeting it where you are. So your mindset needs to be, I'm doing this because I want to be successful. I want to serve other people. I want to have help. You need a mindset that is positive. And another mindset is that you don't have to do entrepreneurship. I know on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people who's like, yeah, ditch your 9 to 5. Entrepreneurship is the way to go. And it's not for everybody. It really isn't for everybody. Like my husband loves and supports everything that I'm doing. He would never do it himself. He needs that stability. And for someone to say, okay, now go do entrepreneurship. I don't know how that conversation would go. So yeah. So the mindset, I think, is the most important thing. And you need to be doing it for a calling and a reason that uplifts you, because it is hard. It's difficult. It's not all rainbow farts and roses. So we need to be able to take the bad with the good. And if you have a hopeful mindset, if you have a positive mindset, it's going to be easier to overcome those obstacles than, oh, I have to do this. If I don't, I'm, in deep doo-doo or whatever. That down spirals into, a failing business, quite honestly.
You're absolutely correct on that. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And my ex-husband was one of those people who worked for somebody, and then he literally dipped his toes in, realized that was not for him at all, and was like, took a step back and said, no, I'm getting a job because I'm absolutely not capable of handling this. And it was good that he realized that. Some people,
Yeah.
like you said, they end up with a failing business, but before they're like, oh wait, maybe this isn't for me.
It is not a failing. Like, I think the most mature thing that you can do is recognize your strengths and your weaknesses and move into that. I do a strengths training as well, and people instinctively work on their weaknesses when they have the strengths just sitting here waiting to be developed. And I'm like, this is bass backwards. Why are you doing that?
I've never thought about it like that. That is so true. Because we're always focusing on like our flaws and things that we think we should
Yeah.
work on instead of shining a light on the things that work.
Exactly. And I'm not saying ignore your weaknesses. I'm saying be aware of your weaknesses, work on your strengths, and work on collaborating with people who complement your weaknesses in order for both of you or all of you to be successful.
Perfect. Okay. I know what I need to do now. Because that's true. That's something as a person who, like, I run my whole operation. However, I do have a business partner who happens to also be my child. But at the same time, she's better at a lot of things that I am not good at. And so I feel like we work really well together. And it wasn't until she stepped into that role that I realized I needed to focus on what I was doing that was right.
Yep, absolutely. I think we would get a whole lot further if we all recognize, like you did, where you are. Doesn't mean that you're running away from your weaknesses. It means that you are leaning into your strengths. So,
absolutely. So, in the role of HR, in your view, what role does effective HR play in the success of a startup or a small business? And what common pitfalls should entrepreneurs avoid?
So I think the role of HR, especially when you are starting to hire more people, my catchphrase is prioritizing people so you can prioritize your profits. It's a lot of P's in there. But the fact of the matter is that you need people in order to get your profits. At the same time, you won't have profits without your people. So you have to understand that investing in people and making sure that they are professionally developed and that they're happy and that they are clued in with your values and your company business and all that stuff is investing in your company and investing in your profits. So again, another mindset thing. Working with HR is a strategic point in order to make your whole business successful and not just your bottom line. I'm not sure I answered the question. Did I answer that question?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just very, very passionate about the fact that people separate their bottom line with their human resources and they actually work in tandem with each other. And if you can realize that and do business planning and your strategic planning with professional development in mind, that people will succeed a lot quicker and a lot faster.
It makes sense. You're absolutely right. I appreciate that insight. Can you discuss different leadership styles and how a leader can identify which style best fits their personality and business culture?
Yes, I did a podcast on this. It was so fun. So there are, I don't have it all up, but there are, I think it, depending on what model that you're looking at, there's anywhere from 7 to like 12 different leadership styles. And the thing about styles is most all of them work if you know what your personality is. And I do a lot of work with people in their personalities as well. One of the things I tell people is that don't try to stuff a round hole or a square peg in a round hole. Like just because this leadership style worked for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you in your situation right now. Figure out who you are, figure out your strengths, your weaknesses, your tendencies, and how you communicate. I think those are the 4 key parts of figuring out your leadership style. And then formulate plans of, I work with people on, okay, how do you communicate? How do you communicate with other people who don't communicate the way that you do? How do you make business discussions? How do you build up a council in order to move forward those business discussions? Do you want to, there are some times where you need to be an aggressive leader in order to get things done, but there are some times where you need to take a step back and be more of a collaborative leader. What does that look like? How do you do that? And who do you partner with in order to make that happen? Because sometimes you just can't do you just can't do that on your own. You're like, no, I have to do this, this, and this. But then they say that they meet roadblocks. And so where are those roadblocks coming from? It's because you need a collaborative style for this period. Doesn't mean that you have to change your leadership style for everything. So I usually work with people to do a customized development of that leadership style because it's different for everybody, as far as that's concerned. But what I would say is that if you find yourself struggling to lead your company well, especially if you have people, employees, there is a book by Patrick Lencioni, I think that's his name. It's the five dysfunctions of a team, but then there's 5 dysfunctions of a leadership. And that's a really, really good book to kind of look at. It sounds negative, but it looks at where you are and how you process and what would work in your situation. Highly recommend it.
We'll go ahead and tag that down below,
Yes.
like whenever we do this. Oh, we have a picture.
I might have one. Okay. So he has a lot of books. This one is, I just picked this up at a book sale. It's The 5 Temptations of CEO. And let me see. Here we go. Patrick Lencioni. That's the name.
Okay.
Yeah. And his first one was Five Dysfunctions of a Team. But when he's talking about leadership, I recommend every leader read that book.
That is going on my book list. I have a list of books that I read and I recommend when people ask me. So
Yeah.
we're putting that on the Patreon so that people can go and look at it.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah.
So I want to keep everyone connected with the same stuff that I'm reading. What are your thoughts on the importance of feedback in leadership and team dynamics, and how can it be effectively implemented?
So feedback is important, but you have to be careful about how you receive it, how you collect it. So if you are just going informally, it's like, hey, I just want your feedback on this. You need to set up expectations. You need to say, hey, this is what we're working on, and this is what we need feedback from. I was just in an HR class and we talked about this. And you have to set up the expectation that I am receiving feedback from you, and I may think it's a good idea, but we may not implement it right away, or it may not work with this plan. So having an open communication is the most important thing, is that, yes, we're looking for feedback for a different perspective on what's everything, what people think about everything. But most often, a lot of people don't have all the pieces to what the CEO or the founder or whatever is working with. And so they're just bringing their perspective into it. So having that communication of, I am eliciting feedback. It may not happen, but I want to know how you feel so that I can tie that in. So communication and setting expectations. And then once you've analyzed and that you've processed the feedback, communicate back to people and say, hey, we got feedback, and while this wasn't going to be able to work, this was, and so these are our plans for the future in doing this, that, and such. So coming back to communication again. So communication, expectation, communication, I think is important for a feedback loop.
Communication is very important, especially when you're, well, in life in general. So there is no especially, just all over,
Yes,
every area.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for the leaders, be free not to take criticism and feedback if you feel like that it's not appropriate or it doesn't apply. Don't feel like that you have, just because you ask, that you have to take that information in. You can let it in, process it, and show it out the door. It doesn't have to stay.
It reminds me of something my mom used to say to me all the time. She would say, everyone's going to give you advice. Take what makes sense and flush the rest.
Yep, absolutely. I do career coaching from time to time, and I tell them, you can get opinion from 3 different career coaches and have 8 different opinions. It's a thing. So figure out like what is sound, what is based, and then move on from there.
It's great advice, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Yeah.
What coaching techniques or tools have you found to be most effective in fostering growth and development in your clients?
So I work with people, and I know there's a lot of people who don't do personality tests. I love doing personality tests, but explain to them that this is not a prescriptive thing. This is something as a base to move forward from. What are your tendencies? What are some of your weaknesses? What are some of your strengths? So I'll do that along with, for more professional engagements, I'll do Clifton Strengths because I think they're fabulous, especially if you get the list of 34 strengths, and do that. And then, so I'll take those, and then we'll talk about that, and I'll take your goals and what you want to do. And if you don't have goals, then we'll develop goals and on what that looks like. And then we do chunking. Okay, so what does this mean? What do we want to work on here? And then how do we work on it? And so we take both those analysis and then work a coaching plan that usually spans about 6 months to a year. I have one client that I've been with for 2 years, and I really feel like the last year I've been the security blanket because she just likes to be accountable to somebody who's outside of her circle, but has the business knowledge and stuff. And I'm like, sure, pay me for, listening to you. That's fine. I can do that. But it's because I established the what their strengths were as being achievable goals. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how I work with people in coaching. And for HR, I do an HR assessment as to where people are and seeing what good things they're doing, because usually there's something good that's happening. And people need to know that there's something good before they get hit with, these are the 5 things that you're not doing right. So what good they're are doing, and then what are things that they have to work on. And then I say the top 3 things that they would need to work on most immediately. And then they have a choice to work on it by themselves or to hire me to help with the implementation.
I love that. Finding out where they are and where they need to go. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. It's not a one size fits all. So if people are like, okay, this is what you need to do without having talked to somebody, like I know people who step into contracts with consultants and say, you need to do this, this, and that, and the other. And they're like, but you haven't assessed our business. Run far, far, far away. Because yeah, it's not a one size fits all thing.
And that's great that you customize it to each, because obviously, everybody's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
And a lot of the times it's because people don't know what they don't know. They've looked in different things. They're like, oh yeah, I need to take care of this. This makes sense. And they are all straight on this area. They're all straight on the bookkeeping and payroll. They have no clue about performance management and vice versa. So it's just the thing.
I think you need it in general, whether it's like raising a family, running a business, because there's always going to be people that are better than you are at certain things. And that's what makes the team work.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I teach in my strengths workshop, is that leadership happens better in a team where all your spiky bits. So we all have spiky bits, and the goal is not to round down your spiky bits. It's to fit your spiky bits with other people's non-spiky bits so that you have a stronger unit together.
Oh, I like that.
I like it too.
It goes back to like not necessarily just working on your flaws, but seeing where they fit into, or not say flaws, but just things that you're not good at.
Yeah, exactly.
Weaknesses.
Exactly.
There's the word I was looking for. English is hard. I'm sorry.
English is hard, especially for a native English person. Yes. There you go. You've got other languages floating in there. Yeah. So that's the excuse.
Mixing the two. Yeah. So change is inevitable in business. How do you help leaders navigate change management while keeping their teams engaged and motivated?
So change management, we'll go back to communication. There has to be transparency in communication. If people are moving towards a change in plan, and a lot of times, as fast as things change, technology is, there's going to be constant change. And so, first of all, you have to prioritize what you're doing, because you overwhelm people with change and they become non-productive. So you need to prioritize what you're doing and what stages, because you can do multiple changes, but you can do a big change and a small change. And as this big change is winding down, then you can do another one, give people a breather, but always communicate, gather kind of like beta groups or focus groups to make sure that whatever you're implementing, that it can be implemented on a smaller scale before you ruin everything on a big scale. And again, communicate every stage of the way, get stakeholder buy-in, making sure that people support. Sometimes people are loud supporters. Some people are loud detractors. Talk to the loud detractors, see what's going on. And sometimes people are, and I think this is in another book that I read somewhere, Good to Great, is that some people are on the wrong seat in the bus. And so maybe sometimes they need to move to a different seat in order to facilitate the change. Sometimes they need to get off the bus. So you need to have a high sensitivity. You need to have a high emotional EQ when you're facilitating changes, so that you are very, very stable in how you encounter obstacles and opposition, but also so that you can read other people and help them overcome their objections and rejections and whatnot. And I don't know if I've said this enough. Communicate. Communication, we're bad at it, but once we do it, it's amazing how the air clears. So
I will agree with you on that.
they're bad communicators on the whole. So if you think you're a bad communicator and people are telling you that you're a great communicator, imagine what they're facing on the day to day basis.
That's true. I didn't think about that. I just was like, oh, I was trying real hard, to like make sure that I was doing the right things by you. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's, and they absolutely appreciate it. So I find that that's something that I continue to bump into because people kind of get tunnel visioned and they get siloed and they forget that not everybody's in their head. Not everybody wants to be in their head. Sometimes it's a scary place, but communication will help, ease things out. Another book that I was actually teaching managers was Crucial Conversation. Have a shared pool of knowledge, shared pool of words, because even when communicating, making sure that somebody's hearing what you intend and not what there is. So kind of, and sometimes that only comes by trial and error. Oh, I told you this. And people are like, oh, I thought that meant this. Yeah, no, that's not what I meant. Let's clarify things so that we can move forward. So,
yeah. Going back to, I went to therapy, and one of the things that you have to do is you have to tell them how you feel, and then they have to repeat back what they heard.
Yes.
So that you're clear.
That is a coaching technique that they taught us, is that, okay, recalling that information so that you're not thinking that they said one thing and then you start coaching them on that and they feel unheard and they shut down. It's a bad deal all around.
Completely understand.
For that, it changes things, because even if they heard something the same, just the fact that you ask them opens them up for input. So, and for correction sometimes.
Making sure that that dialogue is open is very important in leadership, I think.
Yeah. I'm not a communications major, but that this is, I would say, about 60% of my message.
I've heard that several times, is that communication is the key to your message. It's the key to success. It's the key to a lot of things, just even accomplishing small things in your life, making sure that communication is there. And
it says a lot that is something that comes up again, and it's because people don't do it.
No. And I think that's like how most relationships don't end up lasting, is because work or otherwise, is the communication issue. So let's talk about your work-life balance. As an entrepreneur yourself, how do you maintain work-life balance, and what advice do you give to those struggling to find that equilibrium?
So work-life balance, I think, is important, but I hate the word balance because it's never going to balance. I was looking at this terminology, and I think I was watching the Olympics at one point in time, and the people who excel on the balance beam, if you look at them and when they're still, their whole body is still moving. Muscles are adjusting at all points for them to stay in one place on there. So I started using work-life workflow or whatever it is. But no, I think one of the most important things is that balance is very fluid. And so there are some seasons in your life where your work-life balance looks like A, and some seasons where it looks like B. There are some times where you need to communicate to your children, mommy's going to be gone on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but after, set certain times, we're going to have date nights or something like that. So it, again, is the communication piece, but also know what your capacity is. Like my capacity is, if I am working hard 5 days, that I am going to be worthless for the next couple of days. So I'm not going to schedule anything because there's no point. I'm not going to do well. So if I end up having to do something on a Sunday, there's some time during the week where I am taking that extra day, that extra work day. And then know what your priorities are. I rarely do anything in the evenings because that's family time for me. And so if something needs to happen in the evening, again, I replace it on a, weekend or something like that. I make sure my balance is that I spend as much time with my family as possible. So I've built these boundaries, and building the boundaries doesn't mean that it has to be a unfixable thing. It just needs to be a framework which can move if needs to be. So that's how I talk to people about, okay, what does the balance look like in this season? What's healthy for you? What's healthy for your business? What does success look like? And how do we get to that success? And make sure success also includes their personal life. What does success look like for them in their personal life during this season where you're building your business to do A? So it is very internalized. What does that look like for you? Because just because somebody can run 50 hours a week doesn't mean that you have to. So what does it look like for you? And then let's build a framework in order to get there.
I love that you said that, because I was actually listening to a podcast yesterday, and the podcast was Dark History with Bailey
Okay.
Sarian, and she was talking about a factory and how these people worked 50 hours in the factory, right? And she said they didn't work 50 hours a week. They worked 50 hours a time, and then they had time off. And so it looks different for everyone, and their route to success was different. And especially she was talking about the Triangle Shirt Company that was out of New York. It was an old, back in the day, it was built by immigrants. And so they had people in there that were working like 50 hours, but it was, 50 hours, and then they would have time off.
Yeah. My husband said this thing that, like, peasants in the medieval ages, there were certain times where they didn't work or were told you shouldn't be working at this time. And if you added all that up, they had more time off than we do in the US. That should tell you something.
Yeah, because like it's not, how many hours can I put in this week? It's how many hours can I put into this overall?
Yeah.
To make
and
it
I was
work.
Actually thinking through this, and I'm like, especially with remote companies when they're like, oh, you have to do your hours and all that stuff. Why don't you start clocking KPIs and productivity by what gets done and how well it gets done instead of how much time people spend on it? I know that there's just a lot to go into that because, again, that's a mindset shift change and all that stuff. But I think it's time we started thinking about that.
I agree with you. Actually, when I was a kid, this was something that always used to confuse me, because I don't know if it's ADHD or the entrepreneur spirit, but I never understood why someone had to work 40 hours a week to get a paycheck when I could go in, get the job done in half the time, but I still had to like sit and wait. I remember when I had a job working for an insurance company and I had to sit there for 8 hours. Well, before lunch, I had all my work done. And I'm just sitting there like, I'm wasting your time and mine. So I would I was in college at the time. So I was like doing my college work on the side.
Yeah. Yeah. I have one client who just really loved working with me because one of his endorsements was, I can do more in 8 hours than a lot of people can do in 40. And I was like, I don't think that's true, but thank you. So he would just give me a task, and whenever it gets done, it gets done. And it worked out.
See, that's fabulous. That's kind of how I decided that I needed to start a business, because I was like, I could do other things, get the work done, move on.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. My sister-in-law has ADHD, and she's dealing with some of the kids, and it's just a different way of thinking. And I also believe that that's why too many people are on medication, because of the societal expectations. If people did things in the capacity that met with their personalities and their abilities and needs, we would need a whole lot less medication. But that's a whole nother story. So I'm not even going to go there. I just think we should be doing things differently.
No, I agree. I have been unmedicated for a year. If I would have had it growing up, I think I would have been a lot more successful in life. And I think it wouldn't have taken me 10 years to get a college degree. But at the same time, if it wasn't for me taking all of that time and getting where I'm at, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I look at it, and it also takes out a lot of creativity from a person, just from my experience. So not taking it has led me to be more creative, which is why I started the podcast. And it's kind of, I feel better letting my creativity out than I do being productive, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And if you understand about letting your creativity out, you end up being more productive as you learn how to wield it. So,
Light bulb. That makes so much sense because I remember I told you I had just started this podcast and it has taken off exponentially. And because I'm letting my creativity out, I am becoming more successful with it.
ding, ding, ding.
Love this.
I'll send you my bill later. Yep.
Oh, perfect. So I'm on the right path. Good to know.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So do you have any advice for our listeners on becoming an entrepreneur and hiring a business coach? Anything that they should look for to make sure that you match?
So becoming an entrepreneur, make sure you weigh the pros and cons and make sure that you're talking with people. Don't make a decision in a bubble. Don't make a decision in a vacuum. There will be naysayers and there will be people who support you. Make sure that the people who support you have differing opinions, but opinions that you respect. That way you will get a more rounded picture of what that looks like. And I would say work with a business coach that asks more questions than tells you answers. If they're asking questions, it means that they're listening to you and that they're wanting to customize their approach to who you are and what you want to be. But also make sure that they know what they're doing. if they're saying, yeah, you can do it, this is great, you can do A, B, and C, and don't worry about those legal things, I encourage you to run far away. Because a business coach will help you on your road to success, but also, and I shouldn't say, but also, and help you put those legal things into place so that you don't have to worry about getting dinged later on down the road.
Yes, because that is always a fear.
Yeah, yeah. And you can do it without a business coach, but I would encourage you to have somebody that is not family, probably not a friend, but somebody who is warm and accepting and can work with you. And it doesn't have to be the same person for the duration. If you outgrow one, you can look for another one. So, yeah.
And that is a great accomplishment, to outgrow one to go on to another one. So don't look at it like it's a negative. It's actually positive.
It's a positive. I think it's great it's usually for me about the 2 to 3 year mark when somebody says, I'm kind of wanting to go in another direction. That's why I have a lot of referrals in my arsenal. I was like, this is a perfect person to go in the direction that you're going to. I believe in collaboration and helping people out, and also work towards my strengths. So I am good for a certain amount of time in a certain area of business, but as our people are like franchising, I don't do that. I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to pretend I know how to do it, and I don't want to study to do that. So, but I know 2 other people who do that, so I can refer you to them. So, yeah.
I love hearing that. I learned a new term doing this podcast called, what is it? Co-opetition. So we're in the same field, but we're not really, I don't like the word competition. I don't feel like that's what people are.
Yeah. My other perspectives, we never became clients, is collaboration over competition. I'm like, I'm on board. I'm bored for that.
Exactly.
There's enough work for everybody.
Absolutely. And also, there's somebody out there that does something you don't do. So wouldn't it be great to be able to have a referral service and be considered a well-connected person?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So tell everybody where they can find you. What's your website address?
Okay. My website address is Ezer, Hebrew root for help, unfolding. So opening up, unfolding.com. So www.ezerunfolding.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me by my name, Akpene Torku Sims. I also have a business page on there. I'm not up for social media very much, but I am on Pinterest. You can find me, same business name there. So I post a lot of my blogs and such.
I love it. And we're going to go ahead and tag all of that stuff in the information when we post this, so people will be able to find you easily.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for your insight today. I really appreciate doing this podcast with me.
I had so much fun. Thank you for inviting me. This was great.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for joining us for another exciting episode of Down Home Dirt. We'll see you next week.